A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Liolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things UEFA Champions League semi-final first leg as Manchester City beat Real Madrid 4-3 at the ETIHAD. So coming up then into this post-match analysis, the blue team will represent Manchester City and then the red team will represent Real Madrid. So when you have a look at Manchester City, I would say that coming up into this encounter, they were quite weakened then within the fullback positions, especially considering then that they were without João Cancelo and Kyle Walker, who then, when you do have a look at the tactical behavior of the fullbacks within a Pep Guardiola team, are very, very, very important. And I would say then that is where they lacked tonight against Real Madrid. However, let's have a look at the personnel. In goals, they did start with Edison. At left back, they started with Zinchenko. Left-sided centre-back, Emerick Laporte. Right-sided centre-back, Ruben Diaz. At right back, they started with John Stones. Moving on then, right along within the heart of midfield, they started with Rodri. They started with Kevin De Bruyne. And then they started with Bernardo Silva. However, what was very interesting then is that Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva would normally occupy the left and the right-sided half space respectively. However, in this game, they then switched as opposed to doing what they would normally do, because Kevin De Bruyne a lot of the times would occupy the right-sided half space, at times drift to the right wing. Yes, he would often drift into the center as well, but he would occupy the right-sided half space a lot of the times. However, against Real Madrid tonight, he did occupy the left-sided half space and he'd often drift to the left wide channel. And this was then in a bid to offer that qualitative superiority for this Manchester City side. Also then looking to ensure that they overload then the left-hand side and ensure that they have the numerical advantage against Carvajal, as he is the weakness within that back four. This then, when Foden would ever go wide, that would create that pocket of space within the half space for Kevin De Bruyne to exploit. And then when you have a look at the front three, Phil Foden off the left, Jesus up top. Off the right-hand side, they started with Riyad Mahrez. And then when you have a look at Manchester City without the ball, with regards to how they look to press, so they look to press right high up, and they look to press then in a 4-4-2 shape. So you'd have Jesus, you'd have Kevin De Bruyne, you'd have Mahrez, you'd have Bernardo Silva, and then you'd have Rodri, and then you would have Mahrez. This is how Manchester City looked to press and ensure that Real Madrid weren't able to successfully and consistently build up from the back. So this then would ensure that the centre-backs had pressure and couldn't then receive that ball and look to build up. So Toni Kroos then would become available. However, Bernardo Silva would always look then to push up and ensure then that it becomes a 3v3 in that defensive situation. And then, of course, it would become a 4v3 if you add Courtois. However, because then Manchester City press right high up, it forces Courtois then to go long. That then obviously destabilizes the momentum of Real Madrid with regards to how then they were trying to build up and progress play. So Real Madrid then really struggled to build up, and that is because of how Manchester City looked to press them. However, in possession of the ball, Manchester City then do take up a very, very offensive scheme, as at times, it does then go to a 3-2-5. At times, it was then a 3-1-6. So you'd have Phil Foden, left wide channel, staying high and wide as possible. Kevin De Bruyne occupying the left-sided half space. You had Jesus there. You had Bernardo Silva occupying the right-sided half space. And then in the right wide channel, you've got Mahrez. And then you'd have Zinchenko, who would look to invert. And then you'd have Emerick Laporte, you'd have Ruben Diaz, and then you had John Stones. However, John Stones then was substituted and Fernandinho was brought on. So when you have a look at Manchester City, this was their offensive scheme on the night, as they became really, really aggressive within the half of Real Madrid. At times, it would go to a 3-1-6 whenever then Zinchenko would look to push up. And Zinchenko then would be looking to occupy that half space. De Bruyne then would occupy occupy zone 14, or just drop a bit deeper there and look then to have a front six to have that numerical superiority against Real Madrid's back four. And at times then that would force Toni Kroos to drop deep and try then look to assist. So that was Manchester City. A lot of the times on the left-hand side, they were looking to overload with Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne and Zinchenko, as Carvajal then is the weakness within this Real Madrid back four. And then when you have a look at the goal, so the first goal does come from the right-hand side where Mahrez picks up the ball and he looks to cut in and he drifts past a couple of players. He then plays that beautiful ball into that pocket of space. Kevin De Bruyne makes that run in between Carvajal and Valverde. He then finishes with his head. And then the second goal then that was scored is a situation where Kevin De Bruyne finds himself within that pocket of space. He then plays that pass and he plays that pass into Jesus. Alaba dives in. Jesus is able to turn, and then he finishes off very well. And then when you do have a look at the third goal does come by virtue of Fernandinho, who overlaps, and then he puts that ball into the box. Then you've got Phil Foden, who finishes off with his head. The fourth goal then does come through Bernardo Silva, who manages then to pick the ball up within that pocket of space, and then finishes top corner. And I must also say then that the referee did very well there, because then there was a foul on a Manchester City player. However, he did allow the advantage because Bernardo Silva was in control of the ball. Overall, when you do have a look at this Manchester City side, as much as they scored 4 goals on the night, I think they could have scored a lot more. And I also do think that they could have wrapped up this encounter within the first half and should have at least won this game by a 4-goal margin. And then when you move on then right along and have a look at the 2 key points where I think Manchester City really struggled. It is the fullback positions, especially then considering then that on the right-hand side, you did have Fernandinho coming on, and then we did see Vinicius, who was able to expose that. And when you look at the second key point, then Manchester City couldn't finish off those chances within the final third, as they even hit the post as well. However, let's then have a look at Real Madrid. So when you have a look at Real Madrid then, they do line up then in a 4-3-3. So when you have a look at Real Madrid's 4-3-3, in goals, they started with Thibaut Courtois. At right back, Dani Carvajal. They did start with Eder Militao as the right-sided centre-back. As the left-sided centre-back, they did start with David Alaba. And then as the left-back, they started with Ferland Mendy. Moving right along then within the heart of midfield, this is where I think that Real Madrid were weakened by virtue of the fact that they didn't have Casemiro there. So they had to add a reshuffle within the heart of midfield. So Toni Kroos started as the deepest laying midfielder. And then you did have Valverde, and then you had Modric. What was also very interesting about the Real Madrid midfield then is that you had Valverde and Modric. They swapped a couple of times with regards to the half spaces they were looking to occupy. So you normally have Modric, who normally occupies the right-sided half space, and then you'd have Toni Kroos there. At some point, he had to swap, and I think it took a bit of time for them to adjust themselves within the heart of midfield and settle as a midfield 3, because I do think that this Manchester City side were really in control and they were very dominant, and at times within the heart of midfield, this Real Madrid side were getting overrun. And then when you have a look then at their front 3, they did start with Rodrigo off the right-hand side, Benzema up front. Off the left-hand side, then you had Vini Jr. And when you have a look at this Real Madrid side, without the ball, a lot of the times then, it would go to a 4-5-1, and they were also surprisingly looking to press high. And with regards to how they were looking to press, they would also then look to press with a 4-4-2, as Modric then would be the one tossed to join Benzema, and then you'd have Kroos, you'd have Valverde, and then you'd have Rodrigo, and then you'd have Vinicius as well. And then in possession of the ball, because then Manchester City had the lion's share of possession, Real Madrid were always then going to be reliant on offensive transitions and counter-attacks. That's what Real Madrid were looking to do, and at times I think that they lacked a bit of that quality with regards to then their offensive transitions. However, when we do have a look at the goals that Real Madrid scored, so the first goal then does come by virtue of a Ferland Mendy cross, and when he crosses that ball, what Benzema does very well is that he starts in a wide position, and because he starts in a wide position, it becomes very difficult then for the defense to pick him up, and then he does get in front of Zinchenko, and then he finishes very well. And then when you do have a look at the second goal, it does come by virtue of Vini Jr. So what happens in that situation is that Real Madrid are in their own half, and then Fernandinho looks to go man-on-man on Vini Jr. Vini Jr. allows the ball to go through his legs. He goes past Fernandinho, and he runs with the ball, and then he manages then to finish off that chance. The third goal then does come by virtue of a penalty. That was an Emerick Laporte handball, and then Benzema finishes off very well with a very, very cheeky panenka. So the game then does end 4-3. Overall, though, on the night, when I do have a look at it, Manchester City created so many chances. They were the better team on the night. They had the lion's share of possession. They should have really finished off this encounter within this first match, and it shouldn't be a situation where now Real Madrid feel like they can still go on and win this game, especially then when they do take this game to the Bernabeu. I just felt that on the night, from a tactical perspective, defensively, Manchester City were unorganized and they struggled then to manage the game. With regards to Real Madrid then, when you have a look at them, I don't think that they played really well. However, the big moments, the big moments and the experience and the quality of Benzema was able to shine. And also looking at how then Vini Jr. was able then to exploit a very slow Fernandinho who was playing out of position. So when you do then have a look at the second leg, it is 4 goals to Manchester City, 3 goals to Real Madrid, and it is going then to the Santiago Bernabeu, and I think that's going to be a mouth-watering second leg. It's going to be very interesting to see how that one plays out. However, on the night, it is Manchester City 4, Real Madrid 3 at the ETIHAD in the first leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.